You will know the better one so for so I in my yam kirabe be me war. You will know the better one so and my tip and you will know the better one so
All right. Thank you. I think I would like to start by thanking the SOT First initiative for giving me this opportunity. I think that it is a platform that is doing an excellent job, and this is, if you can consider it, my own small contribution towards that job. So what I want to do today is to really start a collective conversation about how can we rethink our education system. And I would like to begin that with, kind of a brief overview of from a BFU USA lens. And excuse me if I say BUI. I know we're talking SOT first. You can substitute for SOT, but I want to relate it to the lens through which I have seen it. And you will understand why I'm saying that as we progress in the conversation. So I'd like to start by giving a brief perspective of, how we got to where we are right now with this presentation, and continue in that drive by providing you with an analysis and a very, unique perspective of our education system and what its performance kind of reflects, and then give you some recommendations that have come from those actors who are on a daily basis involved in making sure that they deliver on that education system. And after that, we can have a Q&A session. So how did I get here? So a few years back, I was called in by Tadom, Chris Bimi, to be the BFU Education Committee lead. And the whole goal was to try to build a scholarship program for our best and brightest kids in division. And so I started running this program, and it introduced me to, just an of smart kids who are, constantly emerging from our education system. And we did scholarships for A levels, we did scholarships for O levels. And then, as the leadership in BFU progressed, Shane Tassim, who is our current president, kind of expanded that view for us to start looking at our school systems. How can we get our school systems, reward our school systems for good performances in schools? So we started providing, awards to top 3 schools who improved their performances from prior years. And, we started expanding that to get a lot more financial resources into that program. And that brought in participative sponsorships. So we would go to well-intentioned BFU members who were willing to chip in a few dollars here and there to sponsor individual scholarship initiative. For example, somebody would decide to offer an award to the school that had the best pass percentage for the year for O levels or A levels, or both. So that kind of expanded our pool. It broadened our scholarship purse, and there was a lot going. And as you would imagine, all of this was happening prior to the kind of chaos that we have on the ground right now. And to facilitate all of that, one of the very good things that Tad and Chris Bimi did was to build this collaboration with NSODA. And I have to mention here that for me was an incredible resource for me when I was there, because he organized all the award ceremonies on the ground, and he would invite actually schools to participate as a way to incentivize other kids, seeing that the rewards were pretty good. So there's been a lot of turmoil on the ground, but that has not relented BFU's effort. I think that Yan and Tassin has done a marvelous job trying to see how, despite the chaos on the ground, we can still continue to support whatever form of education is ongoing. And this year, she was able to actually support two programs on the ground. And one of the programs is the Skills Boys Girls Adult Leadership Program, and another was the Culture Embroidery Center. So that has been an active and ongoing program. So the scholarship program was really aimed at rewarding those who were at the top. And there's a very generous lady, BFU member, who called me one day and said, how can we not just focus on the top students, but look for ways to lower the ladders of opportunity to students who may be in the middle of the pack, but deserve just that simple push or motivation to get them across the board. And I started to think about, so how do we even know who makes up that middle pack, that 80% of the students who are in the middle and who are often forgotten? And I decided that I was going to take a look at our GCE results. And I started looking for those results, and it was very hard to get. I was able to, lean on a few of the contacts that I had back in Cameroon. And I could get 2015 and 2016 GCE exam results for O levels and for A levels. And I decided to take those results and kind of collapse them and see if I could look at these results from a buoy perspective and see what I could make of it. And the second phase was to say, how can I get the people who are on the ground to review these results that I have put together and give me an underground perspective of what they make of it. What I think. And lastly, the action item was to try to figure out how we could develop a pilot project to implement the recommendations that were coming from the pedagogic group that was in the ground, the school administrators, the teachers that I had put together. And what we're going to do right now is to, start to look at those results. And the way I thought was pretty good to look at it was to kind of examine our school ownership architecture. If you go with tribal knowledge, we have really three major types of ownership. We have government schools, we have mission schools, and we have private schools. And then for exam purposes, we have people who register as external candidates to take the public exams that we have. My analysis focused on our ordinary levels and our advanced levels. And I took all the exam centers in Bui. And after reviewing those exam centers in Bui, I thought it would be a productive exercise to associate to that analysis, a comparative performance for schools in around the Bamenda metro area. So I took the results from exam centers from schools in Bamenda, Bambili, Bali, Santa, just schools that make up what I call, for this purpose, the Bamenda metropolitan area. And I took those schools and I collapsed them into the architecture that I described above, government, mission, and private, for purposes of comparative analysis. So let's take a look at what it looks like. So what you're seeing here, and I am going to describe this slide because all the other slides will reflect a similar layout. What you see in orange is the number of students who sat for an exam. What you see in gray is the number of students who passed the exam. What you see in blue is the number of students who registered for the exam. We're going to get to the orange a little later. So what does this graph tell us? It tells us that in 2015, in Bui, 6,000 students sat for the O-levels, only 2,900 passed for a pass percentage of 43.8%. I'm sorry to say that's very disappointing. 4 out of 10. In 2016, 7,000 students registered, 6,000 sat, and similar to 2015, 2,800 passed, which is a 47%. So to me, I said, well, you know, this is Bui. What does it look like in the Bamenda metro area? It's close to the similar story. We're having a 53% pass rate if you collapse all the centers into one. Now, if you remember the ownership architecture I described above, I decided to kind of start to dissect this result into those categories and see if we could understand better where performance is amplified and where performance needs some help. And I said, let's look at O-levels for mission schools in Bui Division. So in 2015, if you take mission schools in Bui Division, they sat 818 students and 546 passed for a 71%. So mission schools, 7 in 10 students who wrote in 2015 passed. In 2016, we're looking at a similar result. 7 in 10 students who wrote passed. For the Bamenda metro area, 8 in 10 students who wrote passed. So we are looking at similar performances here. So, but you would notice that the numbers aren't persuasive in terms of volume. You know, it is mission schools, there's cost associated to this level of education. So I want you to think about it this way, there's cost associated to this level of performance. And some of these costs may be prohibitive for our parents who are in SOC. So let's go to government schools. So if you look at O-levels in 2015, government schools in and around Bui Division had a 39.3% pass rate at O-levels. 4,373 students registered and 2,000 passed. In 2016, a slight improvement in that performance, but not overall a very convincing pass rate, 44%. In the Bamenda metro area, it's 58%, almost 6 out of every 10. So, you know, this is where a majority of students are. And if we have 4 out of 10 kids who register for the O-levels passing, then we actually need to take a step back and start to ask ourselves very tough questions about what it is that is happening. And we're going to develop that a little further. If we take private schools, it is not any better performance. 40% pass rate in 2015, 43% pass rate in 2016, and in the Bamenda metro area, a 47% pass rate for private schools. Still 4 out of 10. So we have our work cut out for us. If we follow along those analyses and we go to external, you know, we all understand what an external candidate is. So these pass percentages seem to reinforce, you know, that knowledge of evening schools, you know, and maybe the level of academic discipline is not that rigorous. So we're passing 26% in 2015, 24% in 2016, and in Bamenda is not much better, is 24%. So I think for O levels, we have a picture that is clear. And personally, I was very surprised by these results. You know, I was really not very comforted by them. But then I started to take a deeper look at it, and you know, certain things started to emerge to me. And so if we look at this, this is an example that I took to illustrate what I'm saying. So here I took center number 11062, Government High School, Kumbo. Registered 717. This is 2016. Sat for 4 or more subjects, 486. Passed 291, 59.8% pass rate. What really shocked me is that 700 students registered, only 400 sat. 231 dropped out. Why? Our results and our education system does not have that safety net that accounts for why there's a dropout rate that is that high. And I went to look in Bamenda metro area. I took Government Bilingual High School Bamenda for comparison, and there is a similar outcome. 629 students registered, 460 sat, 169 did not sit at least 4 papers. Why? Is that an opportunity for us to intervene and try to see, because there is no accountability as to why a student registers for an exam and never writes. So if we go back a little further up and we look at the GCE, what you see in red is the overall dropout percentage, which is represented by the bar that's in yellow. In 2016, out of the 7,700 students who registered for O-levels, 1,566 never wrote the exam. So I thought this, and this is what drove me to go do a comparative analysis. I went to the Bamenda metro area. Out of 10,000 students who registered, 1,978 never took the exam. You know, that is something that should trigger in all of us that curiosity to find out what is going on. Because if we have to improve this pass percentage, one of the areas we have to look at is to make sure that there is an effective participation from every candidate who registers. If we start reducing this dropout rate, the chances that it is going to impact pass percentage are pretty good. So that is, one of the major issues that I identified in going through these exams, looking at it, from a 10,000-foot view. And trying to see what are some of the major fault lines that are being revealed. The other thing that crossed my mind is that, these results are from 5 results. Is it possible that if we went and looked at from 1, from 2, from 3, from 4 end of term results, they will reflect similar performances? In other words, are these results predictable from prior classes? Can we look at our Form 1, 2, 3, 4 results and predict that our performances at the O levels are going to be like this? I have the strong conviction that, it is possible that results that we obtain from regular end of term exams are indicative of this kind of performance. But there lies the opportunity for us. There lies what we have in our hands to be able to work with. I don't have any grandiose illusions about us, revolutionizing our education system. No, we have all been through it. That's what made us who we are today, you know. But this is the opportunity to take a look at our education system from this particular perspective and see if we can start to make progressive improvements by suggesting, you know, some of the ideas that arise from reviewing these performances. Because in my opinion, this is kind of an objective look at what is being produced by our education system at the O levels. So if I progress to our GCE A levels, now at the A levels, we usually have preconceived notions about, you know, government schools, Catholic schools, or mission schools and private schools. But the A-level results start to challenge those notions. And it's amazing. So this is the overall view of our advanced level GCE exams for 2015 and 2016. So if we take a look at the Bamenda Metro schools, for 2016, they had a 67% pass rate overall. In Bui, they had a 72% for 2016 and a 74% for 2015. That is very encouraging. That says 7 out of every 10 students who sit for A levels actually make it. And then the questions start to come. What is the reason for this? What accounts for this kind of a remarkable performance that we're not able to see at the ordinary levels, you know? And there are a variety of reasons that could account for this. Is it class size? That's possible. Is it, you know, subject matter focus? We know that the way our A-level system works, you quote unquote specialize in a particular sector where you feel your skills are better. Is that why we're seeing better performance, you know? So all of those reasons could account for this. Now let's go break it down into the ownership structures that we reviewed at the O levels. If we take government schools, so government schools in the Bamenda area, 8 out of every 10 students who sat for A levels passed. In Bui, almost 8 out of every 7, 78.9% in 2016 and 80% in 2015. That is 8 out of every 10 students who sat, you know. Now, again, we have to start thinking about performance here. You know, these are government schools, but the performance is really good. You know, these are performances that we would like to replicate at the O levels. If we take mission schools, in the Bamenda metro area, it's roughly 90%. 9 out of every 10 students who registered for A levels passed. And in Bui, is 8 out of every 10 for 2016 and 8 out of every 10 for 2015. So it kind of starts to drive up another narrative, you know? Is there that much variance between mission schools and government schools? At the A levels, these results seem to suggest not at all. You know, if we take what the cost structure is for the two, these results challenge, you know, that cost structure. However, having been through a Catholic school, I know that, you know, in the Catholic school, they say you don't go, it's not just the results, you know, you get a little more than just the results. There's more to it. But from a purely academic standpoint, you know, this really starts to challenge those cost structures. Now, private schools, we still have a huge lagging behind. And we see that it's 50% pass rate in the Bamenda area, metro area, is 38% in Bui in 2016, and 48% in 2015. So a huge drop from 2015 to 2016. So overall, the A-level performances are much better than O-levels. And that's an opportunity for us to review what's being done at the A-levels that can be copied over and replicated at the O-levels to make sure that we're driving up that pass percentage and pulling up a lot more students into success. So having reviewed these numbers, I decided that I had formed a personal opinion, and I wanted to see what those who are actually involved in our education system in Cameroon, what they thought about it. So I used the help of some contacts, some of them family that I know who are involved in the education system, and I reached out to some of these people who got together as a task force to be able to review the results. And all I did was to send them those results. And I said, review these results and let me know what you think. I communicated nothing about my analysis, nothing about my impressions of these results. I wanted them to look at it, analyze it from their lens, and then let's exchange and see, what are the opportunities that we have to improve performances in our schools. And this task force, this is what they provided. In their analysis, they said that one of the major issues was staffing. And by staffing, those of you who have been through the system would know, there are institutions where you would find one teacher teaching physics, chemistry, and math, and the more subjects you teach, there is an efficiency rate that starts to diminish. So the advantage that government institutions have is that they have teachers that are specialized in a sector. So a chemistry teacher in a government school teaches chemistry. A math teacher teaches math because that's what they're trained at ENS. So they come in with the subject matter expertise, and that's what they carry along. In private schools and in mission schools, there is that multiplicity of courses that are being taught by teachers, and that could have an effect. And so the task force recommended that staffing could be a major issue. One of the other major issues was lack of textbooks. And if we look at the way our education system is structured, it is really based on student teachers looking into a coursework that is defined and teaching from there. And the problem is that the students come into class and they don't have all the requisite textbooks for that particular subject matter. So a teacher who is teaching geography may come into a class, a government class that has 200 students, and just 10 students have the textbook. So that begins to complicate assignments. It begins to complicate student preparations for that class. The next issue that the task force raised was infrastructure. And by infrastructure, they meant class sizes, student-teacher ratio. And I personally believe that one of the biggest reasons there is that much of a gap at the O levels between government schools and mission schools is the student-teacher ratio. That one-to-one ability is really magnified in mission schools, and in government schools there is more of a problem in that respect. So the other issue that was raised by the task force is one which is really, I think, very critical, which is reading culture and bilingualism. I think reading culture is a big, big issue. If we have to really genetically modify our education system, we have to drive into our students the ability to read, not just the textbooks, to drive into them that curiosity to read all and everything that they come across. You know, that's how they have to learn. Education systems are changing. You know, teachers are no longer the authority, major authority in the subject. They're starting to play a facilitator role where the student is encouraged to research, learn, and then there is that conversation between teachers and students and teachers and students among themselves, and the teacher playing a facilitator role in that conversation and being able to help and guide students. The earlier that kind of education starts to develop, the better that student becomes down the road. So reading is something that helps across every single subject. And one of the curious things we noticed in our analysis was that English was one of the subjects that had some of the lowest pass percentage at ordinary levels. And that is really difficult for me to swallow, because that's the language of instruction. If we're having difficulties passing in the English language, then every other subject becomes that much harder, because that's the language of instruction for every subject. You know, never mind bilingualism. We're not even getting there right now. For us to be bilingual, we have to be proficient in English, you know. So that was a major problem. Common examinations. So the teachers suggested that, you know, one of the ways to start to prepare our students for public exam was to organize in Form 4 a common exam across all the students in Bowie, kind of replicating the GCE format, so that every Form 4 student gets to write an exam that is the same for the entire class. You know, that starts to get their feet wet into how GCE works and takes away some of the stress that comes with students preparing for a public exam. And the last point that they raised, which is a very important point, is the idea of having student counselors. I think that especially now, especially with the trauma we've been through, this is something that will be indispensable for every single school. Students have to be able to confide, complain, talk about personal issues with student counselors that would help them. I could see where independent student counselors can help us account for dropout rates in public exams. Right now, there is no tracking that's being done, but that could be something that we could look at, you know, for student counselors. Is it pregnancy issues? Is it kids that have financial difficulties? Is it kids that have, you know, trauma of any sort? What is accounting for these dropout rates? And it is my belief that these dropouts are not just in Form 5. I believe that at every class, there are students who drop out during the year. Is there something we can do to provide a safety net that starts to reduce those numbers? You know, so this is the task force that worked on this and that came up with those recommendations after reviewing the analysis that I provided them. You can recognize some names. This task force was led by Mr. Vitalis Fondonyoy. And I really appreciate his effort in putting this together. And these are the types of that we're going to need. Collaborating and working with those who are on the ground to try to, you know, bring together our forces. You know, how can we improve on these results? And it's going to take us, you know, creating after this call a group that brings together teachers, parents, students, owners, the diaspora, so that we can cross-pollinate our ideas and start to really take a deep dive and take a bottoms-up solution. I don't have any illusions of us being able to, change in a major way anything, but I'll just give you kind of the thoughts that went into this project when we started it. The idea was to go by pilot project. Take a school and take some of the recommendations that were being provided by the task force. Go to Form 5, buy textbooks for every student in that class, and make sure that we hire teachers for every particular subject. This is an investment that pays up very fast, because 9 months down the road, we will be able to know if that investment paid off, because we have prior performance and we can compare it with the performance of the current year. And if we start seeing indications that, that kind of effort is paying off, then we have the data to start writing grants, writing applications for grants, to say, here is what we've been able to do on our own. Here is the data that supports it. Can we have some kind of funding that we can use to invest in this initiative and drive up our education performance? If we, for example, can only start reducing the dropout rates, figure out what it is. What is accounting for these dropouts? How can we work towards reducing those dropouts progressively, right? And if we can figure that out, there are benevolent souls with big enough wallets who can, help us with that initiative at the beginning. And if it's starting to grow, then we can turn towards grants. But I believe that, we have within ourselves the resources, the brain trust, people who are dedicated enough to be able to look at this and want to do something about it. And, that to me is rethinking our system from this perspective. Thank you for listening. And Pamela, we can go to our Q&A.